Welcome to the debate. Imagine finding out the government owes your favorite massive online retailer billions of dollars because of an illegal policy.
Right, it's a crazy scenario.
It really is. And that retailer is, allegedly refusing to collect the refund while just keeping the money you paid to cover it. We're going to get into whether you are legally owed a piece of that pie today. But before we dive in, please take a second right now to like, subscribe, follow, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our deep dives.
Yeah, and before we get to Amazon, we do need to issue a quick mandatory update on the Martin Stevens versus OpenAI matter. Just to be absolutely clear, this is not a lawsuit.
Right. Very important distinction.
Exactly. There's currently a deliberate voluntary quiet period in place to allow for potential background discussions. We have no confirmation or impression of any settlement progress. And finally, we can confirm that the dead man switch has not been activated, meaning Martin Stevens remains physically and legally safe.
Which is, definitely good to hear. So, speaking of complex legal realities, let's pivot to the absolute legal hurricane Amazon is sitting in right now. I mean, we are seeing a synthesis of three massive developments hitting them all at once.
Oh yeah, it's a perfect storm.
It really is. You have the FTC's $2.5 billion settlement over deceptive Amazon Prime practices. Then the $309 million class action settlement over mishandled returns.
Right.
And now this unprecedented wave of consumer lawsuits. Shoppers are demanding Amazon pass down refunds from the Trump administration's IEEPA tariffs that the Supreme Court recently struck down.
Right, and that sets up the core friction we are exploring today. When a macroeconomic policy like an international tariff is suddenly deemed unlawful, where does corporate liability end and, where does consumer entitlement actually begin?
Well, I approach this as a textbook case of unjust enrichment. Consumer protection principles demand that Amazon return those unconstitutionally levied tariff costs, along with their unlawful fee structures, to the shoppers who ultimately paid them out of pocket.
Okay, but
If Amazon just keeps the cash, it's corporate enrichment at our expense.
demanding retroactive rebates for macroeconomic shifts is a massive legal overreach. I completely agree that direct service failures require restitution. If you trick someone into a Prime subscription, you absolutely pay them back.
Obviously.
But applying that logic to invalidated international tariffs completely ignores basic contract law and, frankly, the mechanics of how market dynamics actually work.
Let's look at how Amazon handles consumer funds in general, though, because there is a very clear pattern of utilizing friction. In that FTC lawsuit, they found Amazon actively used challenged enrollment flows to essentially trick people into Prime.
Yeah, the dark patterns.
Exactly. And then they made the cancellation process an absolute maze. That resulted in $1.5 billion in customer refunds, though, capped at $51 a person.
Right.
$309 million settlement for the exact same issue.
I see those as straightforward operational failures, though. Amazon promised a service, didn't provide it, or they kept money for items that were successfully returned. That's a direct breach. But tariffs operate fundamentally differently. When the Supreme Court handed down Learning Resources, Inc. v. Trump in February 2026, striking down the IEEPA tariffs, it didn't magically rewrite millions of private consumer contracts.
But the foundation of those retail contracts was artificially inflated by an unconstitutional government action. The consumers in Seattle suing Amazon right now are pointing out that Amazon explicitly passed the cost of Trump's unlawful tariffs onto them.
Right, but
And now Amazon is allegedly choosing not to seek the refunds from the government to curry favor with the president.
well, even if we ignore the political speculation for a second, let's look at the actual mechanics of dynamic pricing. How does a tariff hit a consumer? It's not a line item tax at the bottom of your digital receipt.
No, it's baked into the cost.
Exactly. When a tariff is enacted, Amazon's algorithm adjusts the retail price based on thousands of variables. You've got shipping container costs, fuel, inflation, supply chain bottlenecks.
True, but the base cost was artificially inflated by that specific, now illegal tariff.
Sure, but how can a court reliably trace that specific fraction of a cent back to a specific purchase years later amid all those shifting variables? Retail contracts allow for price adjustments based on the overall cost of doing business.
Yeah, but
When the price of diesel fuel drops, Amazon doesn't mail a check to someone who bought a blender 3 years ago when shipping was expensive.
You agreed to a set retail price at the moment of purchase.
Okay, but a fluctuation in fuel costs is a normal market dynamic. A tariff ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court is an unlawful government exaction. They are fundamentally different things.
Are they from a retail perspective?
Yes, think about it like a landlord renting out an apartment. Let's say the city imposes a new property tax, and the landlord legally raises everyone's rent by $50 a month to cover it.
A direct pass-through?
Exactly. But a year later, a judge strikes down that property tax and says the city has to refund the money. If the landlord refuses to go pick up the refund check from the city, just so he can stay on the mayor's good side, but he keeps the extra rent money,
I see where you're going.
right? We'd all recognize that as unjust enrichment. He is abandoning his fiduciary duty to the tenants who actually fronted the cash.
It's a great analogy, but it completely falls apart when you look at the administrative reality. The landlord has, 10 tenants? 50?
Sure.
Customs and Border Protection, the CBP, has stated on the record that processing the 53 million individual entries tied to these refunds is practically an administrative impossibility right now.
They are building a system for it, though.
Right, the CAPE system. But they literally have to build an entirely new federal computer infrastructure just to handle the sheer volume of paperwork.
Right.
So you're suggesting we legally compel a private enterprise to wage a massive administrative ground war with federal bureaucracy just to extract microscopic fractions of pennies to distribute to millions of consumers? That's not Amazon plain politics. That's just basic operational triage.
Look, I hear the operational argument, but the through line here has to be corporate accountability. If we say, oh, it's too much paperwork to get those billions back, we are essentially giving corporations a free pass to benefit from unlawful policies.
But is it a benefit if it costs them money to implement in the first place?
The FTC action and the returns class action prove that aggressive legal intervention is the only mechanism that actually forces structural change in how tech giants handle our money. The burden shouldn't constantly fall on the consumer to navigate the bureaucracy.
But transforming these retailers into villains through speculative class actions misdirects the blame entirely. We have to look at the broader market. It wasn't just Amazon.
No, of course not.
Thousands of small third-party sellers, people making baby spoons and board games, had their supply chains thrown into absolute chaos. They had to scramble to move manufacturing out of China to places like Vietnam or India, absorbing massive costs.
Which is terrible for them, but
they were victims of executive overreach too. Importers bore the initial logistical and legal risks of those tariffs. Demanding that they now act as retroactive pass-throughs for government refunds punishes the businesses that were just trying to survive the chaos created by the government. The blame belongs squarely on the unlawful policy itself.
look, at the end of the day, my view is that the law has to treat the consumer as the ultimate stakeholder here. Whether it's the $51 caps on prime enrollment deception, the shortchanged returns, or billions in unconstitutional tariff costs.
Right.
Preventing unjust enrichment means corporations can't use operational friction or, political calculations as an excuse to keep funds that rightfully belong to the shoppers.
And I maintain we must distinguish between direct operational failures, which absolutely demand direct refunds, and massive market dynamics. Contract law and market stability mean you cannot hold businesses retroactively liable for pricing adjustments that were forced upon them by invalidated government policies.
Yeah.
They navigated the chaos, and they aren't legally obligated to be an endless pipeline for government refunds.
Legal frontier.
Oh, totally.
And we certainly agree that intentional operational deception, like the FTC found with Amazon Prime, undermines market integrity and, warrants strict financial penalties.
Without a doubt. Untangling a global supply chain for millions of individual digital wallets is going to be a monumental task. The real test is going to be April 2026 when the CBP's new CAP refund portal actually launches.
Right.
We'll see exactly how many of these massive corporate refunds materialize and who ultimately manages to cash the check.
Absolutely. When the foundation of a massive transaction crumbles, figuring out who owes whom is never simple, but it is essential to getting this right. Thank you all for joining us. Before you go, please remember to like, subscribe, follow, and turn on the notification bell so you can stay engaged with our future sophisticated discussions. We leave it to you, the listener, to form your own conclusion on where the line should be drawn.